Happy Sunday, everybody. We're down here in the basement for a mostly unscheduled live stream. I don't remember if I said I was going to start at 8:30 or quarter to 9, but it's quarter to 9 now. I can see some comments, and maybe I'm a bit late to my own stream, so I apologize for that. This really wasn't planned. I didn't fully intend on doing this morning. It's a busy weekend, but I felt like I've been working on a bunch of stuff that was fun. I wanted to spend some time on it this morning. Specifically, I'm working on some passenger platforms, which have been a lot of fun. Like, I'm actually enjoying this project, and I thought, you know what, I'll take an hour this morning. We can hang out, have a bit of coffee, chat a little bit in the chat, and just see where things go. You know, I was catching up on some YouTube videos, and the Southdown Switching Layout, who always puts very thoughtful videos out, he had said something in a recent video about, you know, do the thing that wants to be done, not the thing that needs to be done. And so I've been working on so many other different parts of this layout, and the one thing that I really wanted to take a look at was the passenger platforms at my Aldershot station, which is just almost directly behind me. And so I've been spending the last couple weeks playing with my laser cutter and trying to come up with representations of some of those passenger platforms, the architecture of it. Aldershot is really sort of very higgledy-piggledy, and very difficult to actually see the passenger platforms, because when you're under the passenger platforms, you can't see the passenger platforms. And so anyway, I've been spending a couple weeks on that, and I've really been enjoying it. Like, it's been a very satisfying project. It's not a very visible project. Like, I'm doing things and moving things by 0.5 millimeter and then laser cutting and then making changes. So it's not as thrilling to share, but I think I'm going to, show you some of the things that I've got figured out at this point. And I'm going to try a few different little painting techniques. I've done some of this before, but I figured, you know what, it's a good way to spend a Saturday morning. I've also got the trains running in the background. I continually just run these things when they're down here. I have had no derailments, and so they can run for hours on end, and so it's just nice to have them running. So you might see them zipping by as we move forward. I probably should start out by saying who's here this morning, and I appreciate you. It is a long weekend, meaning that this coming Monday is a civic holiday. I think it's technically something like Simcoe Day. So no work for Monday for some of us. Some people have to work, and I apologize to those people. But for me, it means that I've got tomorrow off. And actually this afternoon, I'm going to go and see the Blue Jays play the Kansas City Royals down at the Rogers Center. So it's full day, but I thought, hey, let's knock out some time with you guys this morning. It's Sunday. It's boring. Get together. So right off the bat, M&M Rails, I think, said good morning to everybody the moment I published this stream. BN Ironwood, good morning to you, Steve. Dundas Junction was bored apparently at 7 o'clock and wanted me to get going. Let me see. Lord Nikon 981 is here. Pine Valley Railroad. Approach Medium, good morning to you. The Great Moa. Glenn Power Williams. Bruce. So good morning to all of you. So, passenger platforms. Going backwards, like at least a year or 2 years, I had been working on passenger platforms for Toronto Union Station, and that's when I sort of 3D printed those latticed grow works for the car barn. And I've done some different modifications. It's over at that end of the layout, and it's a big project. It's probably such a big project that I find myself sort of hung up on a little bit because it's so big. And I thought, I keep looking at Aldershot Station. It is one of the principal, I'm not going to say switching points, but it is sort of a principal interchange on the layout because it does have some passing sidings and such. So I do a lot of scale rail fanning there, and I thought, okay, well, let's get down to maybe looking at these passenger stations or passenger platforms, the things that want to be done versus things that need to be done. And so I've been working on designing some little platforms that are in the spirit of what you could find at Aldershot. There is one that's like this, which is an open canopy, and so there are glassed in areas and then open areas with little end doors and these sort of little peaked roofs. And that was one of the very first ones I put together. And I like this. And then I also put together other ones that are in keeping with the way that the passenger platforms are designed there, which is that there's these covered shelters and these long areas that you can stand out and wait. And then one of the most complicated sections that I'm working on is the one that has a little elevator for accessibility, and then this is actually a run through here where the escalator goes down to the under subterranean walk, so to speak. And so I have been going back and forth and designing and I guess cutting these. And I have very quickly moved from being someone who likes 3D printing, I'm able to do it, I like it, to thinking that probably laser cutting is the superior, we'll call it 3D modeling tool. I have been able to iterate designs and produce them very quickly. I can do two full platforms on a roughly 14-inch square piece of birch plywood, and with all of the detailing, it might take 2 hours to completely cut, and then it's done. Trying to do that with 3D printing would be hours and hours and hours, and the results in 3D printing are never as accurate as the laser cutting. Good morning. Is it flat struck from Australia? Or good evening for you, I guess. And good morning, N Scale Train Boy. So these are actually the cast-offs. These have little mistakes in them, like I misaligned some of the holes. It's difficult to see all these little bits. This is slightly the wrong size because it needs to mate up with one of these. There's mistakes made in this particular piece. And so I think at this point, as of last night, I have got each of the platform styles printed. So there is 3, these 2, and then there's 2 more that mix and match to create the full passenger platform. And that platform, I think, is going to be about 4.5 or 5 feet wide, roughly speaking, which is the perfect length for a train and 6 passenger cars, which, going back, is sort of the limitation of this railroad. Because I have 2% grades and those Bombardier Go Transit cars and even the Rapido Buds, they put quite a strain. Unless you have traction tires, it's challenging to pull them up 2% grades on curves. So I've got these are sort of the prototypes that were sitting on the layout, and what I've done is that I have cut and primed a bunch of them like so, and I used a satin paint. And so one of the things I do want to do is dull down the finish on these a little bit. One of the things I want to do now. And then one of the other things I want to take a look at is that I have the platform pieces, which are again just laser cut from the plywood, and I've given them a priming. I've primed them with just some enamel gray straight primer, and so I want to look at doing a little bit of painting on those today as well. Mostly just sort of test some things out, test some ideas out with you guys, and then that way I can think about it and then come back to it and jump into doing the work. So it's a bit of an experimental morning, so to speak. And so when I painted these, we'll start with these little bits. I think it's called Espresso, was the color of the paint that I put on them. And you can see that there is a bit of a shine, but they're also a bit uneven. It pulls out the wood grain a little bit. And really what I want to see if I can do, let me just move this out of the way, is I want to see if I can knock that down. And I just have a bit of 1000 grit sandpaper. And it's sort of like when you're doing furniture and you steel wool it. And I just want to make the surface of these a little more uniform. And already I can tell that's better. And the thing is that, oh, and see, I did too much there. Okay, lesson learned. I took the edge off the paint. I don't know if you can, you really can't see it. But, okay, so that was a little heavy-handed. So what have we learned is that we need to go a little lighter than that. But this will actually get a bit of a roof covering, which is perfectly fine. And I'm also going to weather it a little bit. And so, if we go back down here, I've got these rather delicate pieces that I think, have a bit of a shine to them and are a bit uneven. And I'm just going to take this, and I guess I'm just going to try to just do some minor wipes on it, just to sort of bring down the finish. I cannot stress that these are very delicate. I broke the first few of these, snapped them quite easily because, like, some of these little window mullions are 0.5 millimeter wide, made out of 1.5 millimeter thick plywood, and these are brittle. Now, I am manufacturing this from the IKEA school of engineering, which means that when it's all glued together, I'm sure it'll be rock solid, but in its unassembled state, it is definitely fragile, to say the least. And these do have a front and a back, so they are mirrored. And one of the little pieces that I'm actually sort of proud of is these little guys. Let's see if I can... Well, that's not going to work. Let's try... Oh, there you go. So these are little spacers that go to represent the different doors that separate the sections, and so they will fit. Let's see how I can show this. So they will go sort of like that arrangement, although that's not perfectly clear. And so that in areas like this, you've got a doorway that opens up into this one waiting area. You can see I've got a little piece. Oh, you can see I've got a doorway at the end there. And so this is all done using 1.5 millimeter birch plywood. And the reason I'm using it, it is the only thing that I can find easily on Amazon. I realize that for those companies and those individuals that have sourced out other materials and ordered it special, that's amazing. There is a level of convenience with being able to get something from Amazon next day that works fine for me. And 1.5 millimeter birch plywood is roughly 8 inches in N scale. And so 8 inches from, 8 inches when you are 160 times that size looking from an arm's length is perfect. And really, I don't mind if I only use this width of material for everything that I'm doing. It cuts beautifully. I understand how to work with it. It does have a grain, which means it's got, like regular plywood, it's got a flexible bias and it's got a rigid bias, so it really works well. Pine Valley Railroad, 3D printing and laser cutting do some great things in model railroading. I have a Cricut, but I haven't experimented with it much. My workplace also bought a Cricut that I get to use, and it is definitely, I'm going to experiment with it, and it's definitely going to be used to create the designs on the side of the fascia for my different yards, so the lettering and sort of the rail dimensions. It's one of those things that needs to get done, but I don't want to do it right now. Yeah, so I'm going to knock down a bit of the shine on a few more of these while we're chatting away. Good morning, Mr. Kraus Rails. The one thing I would say about these designs, so that's a good spot where it's quite shiny. One of the things I've learned about laser cutting, it is incredibly precise, and I don't remember what the resolution of my laser is, but it is so precise that it makes it really challenging to assemble the different parts once they even have a little bit of paint on them, which is why I intentionally chose a rattle can to do all of this. because the paint goes on a lot thinner. And that way it doesn't actually swell up the same way. And that's going to be bare. So what I'm going to do for the roofs is that the same 1000 grit sandpaper that I'm using to knock the shine down, I'm going to cut and apply to the roof, which will give it sort of a perfect tar paper look. Technically these roofs are white, and there's good reasons for that. It reflects the heat and such. I'm not sure if I'm going to do the same because I like the look of this more than the white, but we'll see what happens. And when this is all assembled, I'm going to give it a final weathering wash using diluted India ink and rubbing alcohol, which for any of these little edges that I've caught, I think you can see that there, that I've just pulled the paint off a little too much. That'll fill in, and because the whole thing's assembled, it won't cause any problems with the warping. Or shouldn't. Funny enough, I haven't used a Cricut machine for my railroad yet, but I have used one of those Cricut copper material sheets. I cut it with an X-Acto strips and used copper against flash. Absolutely. So we picked up, again, my workplace picked up a Cricut machine so we could label some different packages that we're leaving, crates, and so we used it to put some bespoke decaling on it. And it was the first time I'd ever looked at them. You know, I kind of equated the Cricut with, you know, mugs with inspirational sayings and t-shirts with fun little flourishes, and I hadn't actually figured out that they've got some amazing materials. They have low-tack vinyl, they have stencils, they have metallics, and so really it's another thing to look at. The only problem I would say with the Cricut is that it is a Bluetooth. If I recall, the Cricut that my work has is a Bluetooth only connection, and when you get a room with enough computers in it, it doesn't want to work. It's not my favorite way to approach connectivity. It does have a few blind spots in the way that it works. Yeah, good morning, Path Valley Railroad. Apparently you can run very rigid materials through the Cricut. I believe them, but I'm not sold on it just because the little blade is tiny, tiny, tiny. If you were to take an X-Acto knife and isolate the last 2 millimeters of it and put it on a swivel head, that's what the Cricut is using to cut. And I have a tough time believing that it's going to last forever. And so my sort of isolationist idea is that I don't want to wear out the tip of my cutting machine well ahead of the use case that I have for it. So really, I mean, that didn't take very much. There's some little bubbles on this one. I don't know if these really matter because it's the underside. But that's taken the satin and knocked it right down. So this here represents one of these, and it's mirrored. And so up to the point that you see here where there's this little entrance, this, we'll call it kit, or this version, is one of these, and then the remainder twice. So it flips over and it makes something that's roughly 50 centimeters wide, 500 millimeters, and that represents about 250 feet in N scale. And in terms of the number of parts, this is all of the bits that it needs to cut out in order to make the design that I'm hoping works out. There's one last little part, which is that I need to use some scored styrene to make a peaked little roof. But again, there's only about 6 unique components in this, but I needed to cut, you know, effectively dozens of little windows and little support posts. Now, this isn't done. The way that these walls appear at Union Station is that this bottom, or not at Aldershot Station, this area that's quite thick at the bottom here is actually concrete with then sort of the brown metal sitting atop it. And so these will be painted brown first, and then they'll be masked, and then I'll add the concrete. And speaking of the concrete, I want to play with some concrete colors this morning to try to decide how I want to paint both the platforms and the foundations of the canopies. And it's actually been a bit of a sticking point. One of the reasons I haven't really moved forward very quickly is that the layout has an enormous amount of concrete. That wasn't necessarily, well, it was by design, but I didn't think ahead about it. So there are so many retaining walls, overpasses, bridge abutments, everything like that, that I will be painting concrete for days and months. And I feel like I need to get the perfect concrete color early as opposed to just going for it. And so I want to do a little bit of concrete experimenting this morning. And so I've done this once before, but I've got a series of different colors of white. And I'm going to play with them on these primed bases. I do want them modeled. I don't want it to be even. And one of the things that I learned weeks after that I was doing this, the original time, was that I added an India ink wash, and I think it turned out great. Let me see if I just can't find that for you real fast. It's not handy. You'll have to trust me on this. I hadn't been very happy with the colors. It didn't look heavy-duty, grimy enough. And I mean, every time I go for a drive and I'm passing over underpass, I'm not staring at the road. I'm looking at the concrete and looking at how it's weathered. But after adding a bit of a wash, it worked out pretty well. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a combination of different grays this morning to these pieces here and just model it on. The second thing I want to do is I'm going to use some makeup sponges. Now, these are used makeup sponges. I was actually talking to one of my daughters about the idea of using these really fine sponges. I've used coarse sponges, regular sponges, all the time to model on some paint, and I asked about these makeup sponges because I know that other people have talked about them, and my daughter's like, well, you know, I've got a little pair here that, you know, you can have. They're clean, but they're stained. And I said, okay, so this is a perfect opportunity to give these a bit of a try. And so I'm just going to use a whole series of different off-white colors to try to create sort of a mottled look. Different batches of concrete will have slightly different colors. Yeah, this is something that I continue to notice in certain regions as well. Certainly when I'm in Hamilton, the concrete in Hamilton looks very different than bits of concrete in Toronto. And so just a bunch of different off-whites here. So this one's called Suede. This is a Michaels brand paint. This one is Pale Gray. Drastically different consistencies too. I do like concrete that is a bit brown, and so this is one that's called Ice Latte. Path Valley Railroad, number one, good morning. Be honest, who among us doesn't walk through the stores and wonder how we can use things we see for modeling? 100%. I also realize that's when I'm not paying attention anymore to anyone I'm with. And they're asking what I could be possibly thinking about, and the answer seems to be too embarrassing at the time. This is medium gray. Oh, wow. Well, that's not going to get used. That is a solid lump. So medium gray's off the menu for today. You can go in the trash. We've got here fog gray. Good morning, Flax Struck. And then the last is buttermilk. We'll see what happens with that. As a side note to working with these colors, something I saw Jason Jensen do years and years ago, is he never actually pops the top and squirts the paint from here, because this clogs every time. And so he just always screws the cap off and dumps it onto the palette, and you know what? It works a lot better. So, pro tip from Jason Jensen. So I'm going to just go down here to the project end. So this is one little piece. So I've got plenty of platforms to take care of here. And I think I just want to start dabbing on really lightly some different colors. And this blender looks like, I'm really hoping this stained red color doesn't work its way onto it. Make sure the buttermilk doesn't turn sour on you, 100%. Thanks for looking out for me. Oh, already I like the way this applies paint. And what I'll do once this is modeled up with different colors of concrete, I'm going to go and mask the edges and put the yellow warning stripes on them. So I'll use some masking tape, and that'll be the last step before I apply different weatherings. Oh, that is so much better. Oh, so I should say so much better than using a coarse sponge. I'm going to go pretty light with this sort of brown color. I think I'm just going to make this up as I go along. And for any of you looking, you can absolutely get these little sponges at the dollar store. Good morning, RDGK1SE3019, and good morning, Trainwork. I realize this isn't showing up well for you guys, but so I'm getting these sort of model tones. This is the infamous buttermilk. Maybe a bit too light there, but we'll deal with it. Yeah. Bit of schmutz on the corner there. Well, it looks like in the camera you can see that this is kind of getting a little more mottled. I'm just going to run through the whole palette here and try different colors. I think this is the fog gray. That was a bit too much. Let's see if I can... Yeah, the final wash of India ink, I think, is what's going to set it off. Let's see if I can actually make this show up for you guys. Man, I don't know how well that shows up, but you can see now it's sort of got... that's way better. Okay. All right. And kind of fun, too. Yeah. And so with this, let's see if I can find the piece that goes with it. That's not it. All right. So this piece will get mounted on this one specifically. And I have to be careful. These are a really tight fit. In fact, I'm actually not going to do it on the camera because I will break this. That's the other thing I'm trying to figure out. And so I'll get this, I will paint the bottom level of this with the same color. You know what? Why don't I have a bit of fun and do one of those right now just to see how it turns out. So, this. Let's get a bit of masking tape. Flaxstruck. I'd be curious to see how rolling the paint might work to mimic the use of colored aggregate in concrete. I bet, I imagine that if you actually took like a toothbrush and did sort of the flick, you might get a pretty decent aggregate look. I don't know if it shows up at N scale that well. I think that'd be a great test. So let's see if I can't mask this effectively. All right, so I've masked off then the bottom. So this is supposed to be concrete. And I'm going to start with this fog gray because that is the color of the primer that I've used. And again, trying to make this a light coat. Okay, I'm going to let that sit and I'm going to work on a couple more of these. I'm really happy with those. And I'm going to need some more suede. I would say for the trying to memorize in my mind's eye what color the concrete is in this area, suede seems to be the closest to the concrete color. And if I recall correctly, when I gave it its final wash of India ink, it had a bit of a brown to it, and that's exactly what I wanted. That's way too much. I at one point, to RDG's comment there, I tried to do a brick building once. And so bricks are so small and in scale, they almost become comical when you try to actually model them. And I did do some paint flicking to try to make it look like bricks. In fact, I think I have an example of that. Let me see if I can't find it real quickly. So I did the Ghostbusters Fire Hall a few years ago. It was a combination of an Outland Models kit, and then I 3D printed some of the cornices and such and added them in. But it was effectively a 3D, it was effectively an Outland Models kit that I just sort of kit bashed. And I'll see if it doesn't show up. And so what I did for this particular building is I painted it the red, and then I literally took the toothbrush with very thin paint and I speckled it before weathering it. I don't know if it shows up here well, but it does add enough undulation to maybe suggest it's brick, as opposed to trying to print all of the bricks with the mortar lines. If we think about in N scale, a brick is roughly 3 inches tall, which works out to 1/2 millimeter, and then the mortar line is 1/2 inch, which works into an undetectable width. And so modeling the individual bricks, cinder blocks is okay, but individual bricks becomes a bit of an exercise in futility, really, because you're not going to see them, particularly from an arm's length. They're not going to show up. Anyway, so that was a bit of a speckling. I'm going to use the fine brush for this, though. Or the fine sponge. Glenn Power Williams, I'm definitely going to have to check out the platform color next time I go to Aldershot in October. Why wait for October? I was just there actually a couple days ago. So I'll add another round of color here to the base of my platform and keep adding some on this. N scale, N scale train boy. I'm personally okay with slightly out of scale bricks that I can fill. 100%. I think that a lot of the N scale stuff, you have to make peace with some of the details, like the handrails on locomotives, for instance. If you're able to do like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids and get down, the handrails are like the size of sewer pipes. Because otherwise they're just too fragile and they don't exist. And if you think about the space that your hand goes into behind one of the handrails, it's like 3 inches, which again is 1/2 millimeter. So some of the details need to be exaggerated and gross, and I agree with you with the idea about bricks. Just, if it looks the part, then it is the part. So I've got those two colors on. I'm going to go back in with this tan. It's probably a little heavy. Oh, let's see. Let's do a bit of this. I built a Wathers 2-stall engine house 28 years ago. I really messed up the mortar work, so I ended up painting every single brick, using 6 different shades of paint, using a fine brush. Remember, that was 28 years ago. That's a lot. Yeah, this is a... Forgive me if I'm getting way too excited about how a paint job's turning out. I've been overthinking this, and to see it actually working itself out is thrilling. The smiley face is appropriate. I would also say that, you know, I know these exist. I know other people have used these little makeup sponges. The way that they apply paint is very similar to how a airbrush is going to apply paint. It has a very soft edge. you know, I like to use some graffiti stencils, and I'm very seriously considering making little graffiti stencils and then trying to dab on the different colors. It certainly is a lot cleaner process than firing up the airbrush. Cleanup's a lot easier. Path Valley Railroad, and if you really hate yourself, as it seems I do, you can work with NN3. You know, I love working in N scale, but I do sometimes question how reasonable it was to pick this particular scale. So it almost has disappeared now, but that's the base of the passenger or the platform area. Maybe just a bit more of this, and we'll maybe call that a day. So again, that coat of paint went on really thin with these little sponges. So I don't know. And that's pretty good. A little, I would have preferred to have kept that edge a little cleaner. I should have probably burnished that down a little bit, or I could have done some another color, but really, let's see. I'm really okay with that. And so that will then get directly mounted. Let's try the other camera here. So this isn't the right piece for the right thing, but that'll go directly on there, and so the concrete will come up. And once I give that an India ink wash, I think we'll get to a place where that looks really convincing. Okay. So I'm not going to do any more of that today or this morning, but I am going to continue to mess about with some of these. N Scale Train Boy. I'll have to try this to feather the edges of my boxcar roof so there's less of a harsh line between the paint and the raw silver metal on the roof. That is the ticket. These are great. I mean, I must be late to the game because clearly, these have been used before. But the results on these, if you can see the before and after here, this is seamless. Yet it's muddled. It's got that warm brown color that's very typical for this area. And I've used absolutely no paint to get it to this point. I'm not excited necessarily to do 17 or 18 feet of retaining walls with one little sponge, but I'll get past it. N Scale Train Boy, I really have to get back to work on my scratch wheel of my local historic rail depot. The goal is to get it done by the NER NMRA convention in September, but I've got a long way to go. Well, I assume you're working on it right this moment as we're chatting. I think I've said it before. The rise of, or the seeming rise of the live stream has been really great for someone like myself. I think I've mentioned it before, but literally in front of me is a television. So the camera that I'm using to say hello to you is 6 inches in front of a television, and this is my work desk that I set up. And so I will come down here and I will throw on live streams and I will just play them back to back. So it's first of all, you can find someone that's doing a live stream literally every day of the week. You subscribe to those channels, and if you can't catch it live, I throw it on. And for me, it's just nice to have the company in the room as I'm working along. The trains are in the background running circles behind me, so it sounds a bit like a railroad back there. I've got someone sort of sharing their thoughts and taking a look at projects that they're working on. And so it actually makes for one of the more ideal work environments for me. Now what I'm noticing is that when this guy got cut, I didn't knock out all the little bits in here. And they just fall out. Okay, back at it. N Scale Streamboy, yes, you and Paul Stamp for sure. They are on my regular rotation. I do feel badly that I'm not able to drop in live for a lot of these things because, you know, I do want to be generally very supportive of anybody who's online. I think it's a really valuable way to build up a community that there's potentially thousands of miles between, you know, basements and train rooms. But life gets in the way, so I do try to watch every single stream, or at least put it on as a continued piece of entertainment while I'm working on each of my different projects. Path Valley. The weekend after Altoona, we have a show in the train station at Danville. Most excellent. And because these sponges are putting the paint on so thin, it's almost drying instantaneously. Like, I can't say enough good things about how this is working. I work day shifts now, and 4 a.m. Now, I am also a rather early riser, kind of by choice. And so, yes, it's always an evening event for me, or early evening. Let me just slide this over here. So I'm hopeful that you can see the color variations across this. This is great. I mean, I can still see a bit of the wood grain, which I think will be interesting when I apply a wash to it, but this is definitely filthy, ugly concrete. And one of the things I did not expect is because all of the paint coats have been so thin, it hasn't filled in the etch lines. And so the laser cutter, for those who haven't used it, you basically can adjust speed and power. Not necessarily laser width, but it's speed and power. And so the combination of speed and power means that you can either create a cut that goes clear through the wood, or whatever the substrate is, or you can just etch so deep. And so each of the cracks or expansion joints are laser etches that are, you know, 1/4 of a millimeter deep into this material. And because I sprayed on the paint, the base coat, and because I'm sponging, they've maintained, and I don't need to do anything to draw those out. These are, in my mind, like, effectively done. Those etch lines, yes, absolutely. Flagstaff, what's the most satisfying part of the hobby for you guys? I find it fascinating to compare. Most satisfying part. I know that I like the idea of world building. I think the research is fun. I think, actually, I'd like, probably one of the most enjoyable parts of this hobby is, for me, is the scaling component. That doesn't sound. So what I mean is that you take a structure, like if you've ever taken a look at, like we have an Amazon warehouse that was built a few kilometers away from me. This building is the biggest thing I've ever seen. Like you can't even imagine how big it is. And certainly when I go into the city, like I'm going to do this afternoon, 40-story skyscrapers, I don't think we really realize how big they are. And early on when I was working on this layout, I wanted to include in the Union section some skyscrapers. And I was like, okay, so 40, 50 stories tall, how many feet does that work into? And you suddenly realize that some of these buildings are really big and you can't include them, right? Like you've scaled stuff. So I find the scaling part is really satisfying. I'm currently working on a design for the Aldershot station itself. I was there visiting it again. And there's two parts to the station. There is sort of like the business part, which is a great big area, and then there's an entrance and atrium. And for this layout, I could only ever fit the atrium. So I will try to do a version of the atrium so that people who are familiar with it might say, hey, that's the Aldershot station. And I will scale it and modify it until I wind up with something that is recognizable, but isn't true to life. And I probably would say that that is one of the most, that's the most fun that I have. And then the second one is wrecking things, adding graffiti and that sort of dystopic flair to wreck it. I find that really, I really find that a lot of fun. N Scale Train Boy, weathering and switching operations, absolutely. Path Valley Road, I like taking locomotives that don't work and making them run again. Custom painting and deckling, yeah. How about I do one more pair of these guys? Like these are bone dry. Like they're ready for the layout. So I need to mask them and add the yellow lines. All right, add a bit of the brown then. Oh, that's a bit heavy, but I'm thinking I can blend that back out. Apparently this concrete was poured with dirt. That's the look I'm getting here. Blackstruck, I don't get much from running the trains, but I constantly build, rebuild, iterate pieces of the layout or rolling stock. So a lot of the process of doing, not running. One of the things that, for me, operations isn't something that maybe appeals to me in the same way. Now, because I like passenger trains, they're, in my mind, more of a train spotting activity than let's say, small yard switching or something like that. And part of the reason I started with N Scale was that you could run passenger trains. And so, like right now, as you can probably see occasionally train zipping in the background, I love train spotting my own layout, so to speak, and so I will put them on like I have here and just let them run, as I said earlier, for the entire time that I'm down here, and then I switch them out and put some new consists together and run those across different eras. And the process of just watching them, you know, go around rhythmically is something I really enjoy. So to iterating on building and not necessarily running, I'm not saying I'm the opposite, like there's a good and a bad. It's just saying, yeah, I can appreciate all the different facets. I mean, let's face it, I mean, a lot of us, one of the parts of the hobby that we enjoy but we don't want to admit to is collecting stuff that we don't need. I keep looking at different things that I can pre-order and trying to work out a way that I can justify a purchase for something that makes no sense. And usually the irrational thought wins out, and I get something I don't need. So that overly brown color immediately disappeared as soon as I started dabbing on the white. Approach medium, I'm a big fan of switching operations, but I'm definitely jealous of you guys with continuous runs. To Mr. Approach Medium, congratulations on your move. You know, I don't have a lot of details, but I saw that you moved and you managed to not destroy your layout and get it into your new place. So congratulations on moving. Always stressful. No one loves moving. But I would have to say that I think you had a view of some passenger trains from your previous residence's window. So I hope you can manage not having that same exposure. No wonder they use these for makeup. I'll miss the view, but not the trains waking me up at night. All right, so let's put this aside. So I have been told that all I do now is take this with a little bit of hot water and soap and work it up to a bit of a lather and rinse it out, and this will be clean. And so if we take a look down here then, with you guys, I've managed to get probably half the concreted passenger areas painted with you guys. I've done a bit of a test run to see how to add the concrete to the bottom of one of the wall pieces. I effectively used no paint, and I can finish the rest of these up probably in half an hour, which puts me in really good shape. So to move from the printed plywood into these concrete, I'm thrilled. Excuse me there. Yeah, T-track instead of N-track for me, the same here in Perth Valley. Got some runtime N-track there. It looks great on camera, so on way looks better in person. Oh, thank you for saying so. Sometimes the camera stuff is difficult for me to judge. So what I'm working on here is in real life. There's a little camera right over there. Say hello, camera. Hey, camera. And I can view it, I can monitor it, but it's on a window this big. So thanks for letting me know that this actually looks okay. Well, you know, I think that this is a good place to pause for today. This coffee is insufferably cold at this point. Cold black coffee is superior to anything else, but it's still cold. And I appreciate you guys hanging out with me this morning. I will have another stream this Thursday. evening. It's part of the Third Rail Thursdays, which I get to hang out every Thursday as a rotation with a few of my other friends, Mark from M&M Rails and Chris from Go V or Go Home. And I will definitely be leaning into this project a lot more. I've got the next day off, so I'm hoping that I can fully assemble one section of these passenger platforms to see how they look, and then continue working on this stuff. I may be able to show off a new Go bus. I know the last time I streamed, I was thinking about running down and grabbing one from the hobby shop, and rightly so. A number of people mentioned they're not open, and they were correct. They weren't open. So I'm hoping to do that tomorrow. As said, I'm going to go see the Blue Jays this afternoon, play the Kansas City Royals, which is probably going to be quite a bit of fun, which means I get to take the GO train into Toronto and hang out at Union Station, which is a perfect opportunity. I'm taking my father. I hope that he can bear with me as I keep taking pictures of stuff as he shakes his head and walks ahead of me. But there we have it. Thanks for joining me. I appreciate this. It's nice to do something on a Sunday morning with a bunch of friends. I hope the rest of you have an amazing day, and stay safe, and I'll see you this coming Thursday. Have a good day, everybody.